Alrighty, I am live. Hi, everybody. I'm Kat Scheffler. This is Cox Talks, and I'm going to be your coxswain coach for the day. So today I was going to answer a question that I got on my YouTube channel about 4 months ago. Sorry, Rahul. The question is, hey, do you have a video about what to look out for in the boat from the cox's seat in order to direct technical calls to single rowers? I have gotten questions similar to this before. Um, so yes, I do. Um, I I think in an eight, the only thing you can really see is the blades. So we have to interpret information from that. I'm going to kind of go in order from like the first easiest thing to notice. Um, the first thing that you can see from the blades is the catches. That's going to be the first one you look for is just timing, if it's early or late. What does that mean? Um, the catch, as we know, hopefully, maybe it's been a while if you've been in a boat, but the catch is when you're up all the way forward and the blade goes in the water. That is the catch. And basically, you're judging everyone's timing versus the one person. Technically, you're supposed to do the stroke seat versus everybody else, but what you're going to be looking for is, say, rower number 3, if their blade is going in the water earlier or later than stroke seat and the rest of the boat, you're going to be able to call out that rower, letting them know that their catch is early or late. That's the easiest thing. If you don't get it right away, that's okay, because if you're very, very new, it does take training your eye to be able to see that timing. I remember the first time that someone pointed it out to me, could not differentiate. It looked like all the blades were going in at the exact same time. So you're going to start watching, and you train your eye to see the timing, and the better you get, the more you're going to be able to see just that millisecond difference. So that's the first thing, is you're just going to be watching the blade and looking for when it goes into the water. There's, let's see, I guess a couple other things about catches. You can be looking at when it touches the surface of the water versus when it goes all the way in the water. Some people are slower about that process, and some people are a lot faster. So sometimes people, when you're trying to decide if they're early or late, you're touching the water at the same time as everybody else in that stroke seat, but it's getting in the water all the way later. That's just because their catch isn't as fast. So you can start to look for things like that too. Or maybe their blade finishes getting in the water at the same time as everybody else, but you notice that they're starting it way earlier. So technically their catch is early, and we don't want that. We don't want their catch to be early. But we just have to work on getting their catch in a little bit faster. Let's see. You can also look at the depth of their blade at their catch. So if their blade goes in really, really deep in the water and you can't see the top of the blade anymore, you'd let them know that they are burying their blade too deep. You could also call it digging. Or you can just let them know that their blades their hands are up too high, because the higher their hands go, the lower their blade's going to be. So maybe they're just going and they're taking their stroke and they're bringing it up really high. So you can look at the depth of the blade under the water through the whole stroke. Some people do this a lot. A lot of people come through the whole stroke. They let their hands come up and then they come back down. They do a big circle. So if their blade gets really, really deep in the middle of the stroke, that's what they're doing. And you want to remind them is to keep everything horizontal and to come through nice and level and steady, and to come in and out at the same place. You can remind them that they need to have level hands. Tabletop is another word I like to use. Keeping the distance of their hands or their handles the same off the gunnel, the edge of the boat. That's going to be reminding them that they don't need to go up really high. or down really low on the recovery. Let's see. So I think that's the biggest things about catches. I'll just go ahead and jump to that hands. And if you're watching their blade and it is moving faster or slower, there's two things that could be happening. One, they might be shorter or taller than the other rowers in the boat, and therefore they have, say they're taller, they have a further distance, further handle, and therefore their blade to go, and it's going to look like it's going faster. It is going faster, but they have to go a further distance. So you can't judge 100% based off of comparing the speed of their blade to the other blades. But if they're about the same height, and if their timing at the finish and the catch is off on everybody else, that's how you can decide if they're going too fast or too slow. So you can look at that catch timing and that finish timing, which if you understand the catch timing, finish timing is also really similar. So whether it's coming out at the same time, that one's harder because if they're coming out too fast, maybe that just means that they're pushing harder. And if they're coming out too slow, they need to push harder. That one's a little harder to call, I think, but you can just say like match up your release timing and match up the finishes. Another thing, we talked a little bit about the handle height off the gunnel. You can see that if you look out at their blades, look at the height of the blade off the water. And that is going to tell you the height of their handle, right? Like this. So if their blade goes up, their hands might be too low. So you can tell them to bring their hands up a little bit. And if their blade is too low, then their hands are a little too high. You want everybody's blades to be at the same height. I wouldn't over focus on this, especially if you're new and especially if your boat's new, because of all the other things to focus on. The blade height isn't like the most important one compared to catch timing, ratio, rhythm, segmentation, all that other stuff. The blade height is kind of tertiary. So you can point it out, and especially if somebody's blade is really high or really low, then go ahead and call them on it. If their blade's on the water, then they're trying to set the boat because the boat's not set, and their hands are just way too high, or their spacers, and they need to change their spacers. But they need to lower their hands and get their blade off the water. Or if their blade is way, 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 way high, a lot of people do this right as they're approaching the catch. It means their hands are really low. So we call it skying their blade. A lot of times rowers do this one of two ways. Right as they're approaching the catch, they either drop their hands because they're really preparing for a fast catch. So they drop their hands in order to lift their hands really high. Or they drop their shoulders and they lunge. That's really common. So when you see as the blade is above the water and right as they're getting the catch, their blade goes up, should not. It should actually go the other way. It should go down into the water. If their blade lifts before it goes in the water, then you know that one of two things happened. They either dropped their hands right before the catch, or they lunged. You can't really tell which one it is from your seat, but you can probably watch them from a side point of view. So whether that's video, asking your coach, watching them on the erg, whatever it is, you can learn what that person probably does. And they're probably doing it in the boat when you see that happen. So you can find out what that person's thing usually is, or you can communicate that. I have done that in the past. I've gone, I'm not sure which one you're doing, but it's one of these two things because you're skying your blade. Or you can just let them know they're skying their blade and hopefully they make that adjustment. Their body over, that's really hard to see. You can start watching the timing of their blade. That, as it comes up, like I said, it's not going to be perfect because if they're at a different height, you can't perfectly time, but you can kind of look at the speed of the beginning of the recovery, which should be the arms away, versus the speed of that arms and body and the speed of the legs. So if they're like really, really slow, if their blade is moving really slow and then it goes really fast, then you know that on that legs, they are zipping forward, or they're getting their legs in their body. They're doing something. They're going way too fast at that. Gosh, it's been a while. Not top quarter, last quarter. I've been going a while. So that end of the recovery, they're going too fast, or vice versa. If they're really, really, really fast, if their blade moves super fast and then it slows down, that's actually more ideal, but you want to compare it to everybody else and maybe think they might be just really rushing the beginning of the stroke. We call that rushing. So we wouldn't want them to just be throwing their body weight forward way too fast. So those ones are much harder to tell. I would say focus as you're learning on that, whether it goes up or down, the height of it, and then the catch timing is when it goes in compared to all the other catches, right? This, then you're going to know that somebody's early or late. We can also just say, get your catch timing together. But like this question said, how can we look at one person in particular and give that person feedback? You're going to look at that one person and see how it compares to the rest of the boat and stroke seat. Stroke seat is supposed to be setting the rate, so you want to mostly compare it to stroke seat. The only reason I say the rest of the boat is because every once in a while, stroke seats are like, somehow they're late because they don't get their catches in. Roll up, that's the squaring up as they come this way. Some people need to roll up earlier because some people do this and they just like square up and put it in at the exact same time. And that's a late roll up. So you can say, hey, start your square up, start your roll up earlier. I wouldn't think it'd be as big of a problem to roll up early, but of course it depends on what your coach wants and what your boat is doing. You want everyone to roll up at the same time. So you're going to talk to your coach and say, hey, when are we supposed to square up? When are we supposed to roll up? If he says half slide, start early. Start telling them when they're about halfway up, and you can look at your stroke seat and you can kind of see where that halfway point is and say, guys, this is when you're supposed to roll up. Or, are you supposed to do it at 3/4? And that's when you need to tell everyone to roll up. Basically, you want everyone doing it at the same time. Let's see. And ratio is just going to be that ratio of the recovery to the drive. You can see that, you can feel that, particularly even if you can't see it, you can feel it. So start to learn the rhythm of what happens when people throw their weight forward and what happens to the boat, and what that feels like to you. And if not, your stroke seat, or if you're in a forward, the bow seat, they can tell you, and they're going to say rush or they're going to say ratio. And then you can still make that call. The only way to tell if it's an individual rower is, again, looking at their blades, and can you see if they're moving a lot faster than everybody? Are they catching earlier? If they're catching early, that's going to indicate that they're rushing, that they are rushing the slide and they're just getting up there way too fast. And that probably means that they need more ratio, or they need to lengthen out. Maybe they're just rowing really, really short, meaning they're not coming all the way up or not finishing their stroke. Most likely they're not coming all the way forward. And then you guys can always just guess on certain things. Calls that you can always make at your boat is to sit up. Ratio, you can always remind everyone of ratio, because you can always use more ratio, always. That's slow the slide, increase the drive. To have level hands, right? And that tap down, your team and your coach is going to want slightly different things than other teams and boats. So how much of a tap down do you want? Is it very minimal, which is just in and away, and it's not really even tapping down at all? Some boats are going to have you tap down a lot. So what does your coach want? And remind them of that tap down and look for it, because you can see the blade height, so we know how much they're tapping down, So looking for keeping everything level, except for that catch and that tap down and how much of that it's supposed to be, and keeping everybody together. So you can always remind people to match up, and we can look at the speed and the timing of everybody and remind them to match up their catches, match up their body speed, match up their body over, even though you can't see that. You can always remind them and take a guess. Sometimes you just take a guess and you're like, yeah, match up your body is over. I think that's a problem here. Let's see. In a 4, very similar. You just can't see anybody. So you can see maybe bow seat, maybe bow pair if you're looking, if it's not a race. The biggest things for 4s are just feel when bow pair does something versus when stern pair does it. So if you feel like a little surge and then you see bow pair's blades going in, one of them, they're late because that surge meant that stroke seat or stern pair already put their blades in, or vice versa. If you see bow pair putting their blades in and then you feel like a surge, that means that that second surge was stern pair happening after bow pair got their blades in. So then you know timing and you can call out timing. Everything else, you just guess. Not really guessing, but educated guesses. If when in doubt, sit up, ratio, smooth level hands, tap down together, clean up the catches, match up the catches, things like that. But if you are looking for individual things, those hopefully answered your questions, and hopefully that helps. I'm gonna end our stream so it doesn't get too long, but thank you for your questions, and I will try to get back at you guys more as we're starting to get in boats more. Thank you. Bye, guys.